Well, that little piece about the microwave, it's for a viewer who said she'd never heard a microwave play a tune before. Well, there's a first time for everything. So I thought I'd just pop that in. Now, hello everyone, Mary Rose here at Stitch Bliss Corner on, what day is it? 22nd of September 2022. And I've just got a few notes here because, well, I'm going to be sort of doing lots of different bits and pieces today, and I'll probably still forget some of it anyway. But I would like to begin by expressing my condolences for the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, a great monarch and grandmother. She devoted her life to her duty. She was very young when she assumed the throne, and as long as I've been alive, she's been there, put it that way. So, you know, I'll be saying a little bit more about her later, but I'll do that at the end of the video. Although I will just show you this little photograph, which I thought was very touching. And that is the royal bees were told of her passing. And there is a folklore that if someone owns bees and they die, this is English folklore, of course, they have to be told that the owner has died, or else they go somewhere else. It's just, well, I suppose it's based on truth. I mean, most of these folklore stories are based on truth, or else they wouldn't assume such a marked place, you know, in life, you know. Anyway, so I just thought that was rather touching. Now I have an FFO, an FO, and a few other things to show you and talk about today. So there you go. I've got royal blue on in honor of the Queen, and as she loved nature so much, I thought I'd put this one on as well. Is there anything else? Yeah. Now, oh, well, I suppose we better get on, didn't we? Instead of me sitting here with my mouth open, gaping at you. Now, the FFO was the piece that I've been stitching to honour Harlequin and I's wedding and our life together. And for after one of us goes, we'll have it as a reminder of the other one. And it's, of course, this one, which many, you've seen many times before if you've watched this channel. And it just struck a note with me because of our wedding photograph. And as you can see these two horses going into the along together, chatting into the beyond. Well, that's the way I look at it anyway. Now, it's from this wedding photograph here of the lad and myself. And Harlequin, just to make it look more like this one, the photograph, he's just reversed the images so that it shows better. Fine looking fellow. Gorgeous man. Anyway, so that's him. And I'm going to now go to my video of the FFO because the actual picture is too big to hold in front of you. It's just be. So I've just insert that now so that you can see the final one. Here is Rise Above, back from the framer, and I've just popped it on a convenient wall just to give you a bit of a look at it, and I will go up close just to give you a final look. 18 count Ada. The background there is all single thread, 1/1, and then I mixed it about a little bit. The figures are 2/2. Oh, sorry, I always get that wrong. 2/1, and these the sides of the canyons there. You can probably notice that part there is in single 1/1, and the other lighter colours here and here, they are 2/1. So I just sort of used my judgment as to where I was going to use single thread and the 2 threads. And I'll just do a little close up there of the horses. So yeah, there it is, all finished. I don't think I'll be able to hold this up face to camera because it is so big, and I've moved on to new things now, but that's Harlequin and I's special piece. So he's just coming in, so I'll stop now. He's in the garden. Yes, he was just coming in from the garden, so I thought, well, I think I've said everything I needed to say. So that's that FFO'd and sorted out, which I'm very happy about. And, I can't help but look at it every time I walk past. Now, the FO I have is the Artisy Rise Above, which I did on 18 count, and I think most of you have seen that as well, quite a few times now. And it's very nice to also have finished that one. Now, here is the final finish. And as you can see, it's very colourful. And the mountains, you know, it's the sort of thing you just couldn't fudge the background, of course, because of your mountains. Harlequin calls that one K2. I mean, and I don't know if you've ever heard of K2, but it's on the Pakistan border, and it's what they call the mountaineers' mountain, because everybody in the mountaineering community wants to climb Mount Everest, but K2 is the one that is the real challenge. K2, everything has to be absolutely perfect, and it's only climbable probably, I don't know, between 2 to 5 weeks every season. It might even be less than that, and it has claimed many climbers. So, but anyway, it isn't K2. that's his little sense of humor in there. And the background is all single thread over 1, and the foreground, including the spears, is all 2 over 1, and of course this area, because I wanted those mountains to recede into the background more than they would have done if I'd done it all in 2 over 1. And of course, for those stitchers who think of economy as well, it is not as expensive actually to do your single thread for your background. But if you're thinking of doing that, well, of course you work out how many threads you'll need. So anyway, that is finished, and I'm now gone back to Dear Guest from Far Away, which, honestly, that piece, it's just so enjoyable. I cannot tell you. Now, before I go on to that, I'm just going to show you what I've done with the threads that I finished up with on not across the divide. Oh, my goodness. Rise above. Now, when I finished those, I've got all these bobbins here, and instead of putting them all back in my containers with all my numbers and everything, you know, in order, I just wrote what I have in here and left it in the bag. So if, for example, I go to my bobbins to get, you know, a number out and I don't have it in there, I can have a quick look in this bag and I can just look at the numbers. And it's a really good method, actually. I've done this a few times. I've got a few bags over there. And, you know, you can just mark it off. If you take one out, you just mark it off. And then when you've got time, you can put them all back in your major record of, you know, your bobbins. You put them all back in the numerical order. But I find that I really don't like taking a lot of time with organising things because it takes away from stitching time. So, you know, most of my things I do as far as organisation goes are very brief. If I can get away with it, that's what I'll be doing. So that's what I've done there. So I thought, you know, people might be interested. Plus, if you've finished your piece and then you're washing it or whatever, and you just look and think, oh, I've missed a stitch there. Well, you know, you've still got your collection of bobbins there until it's actually framed, that you can refer to if necessary. So that's another good reason for having that. And then I just thought I would show you the Dear Guest from Far Away here. There it is. Now, the artist is Oscar Freeworth Lutzow. This painting is located in the Hermitage Museum of St. Petersburg, and he painted it in 1888. And I've got a better picture of it here. And you see, the fascination with this is, as I've said before, there's always something to stitch. Like, I've been doing this area here, and I'm getting very close to that coat that he's got on, and the embroidery on it and everything. And Harlequin's looking forward to the tablecloth part. He's quite fascinated with that. So I have, with the way it's charted, it's 7 rows of, 7 rows of pages. So I've started at the bottom, which is very unusual for me. I usually start in the middle, work up, and then come down. But I think the problem for me was his boots. I just had to stitch those immediately. And of course, it's heading towards his pantaloons as well. So, I mean, what's not to like there? So, so I thought, well, in this case, I will break my own rules and I will actually go from the bottom up, and to heck with the consequences. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work. Because you're going to have this big bulk, at the bottom. But anyway, I'm sure it'll all work out in the end. So I'll just show you where I'm up to with that. This is the hoop I'm using. Nice and simple. And it must be pretty old because it's a Semco one. And I don't know that Semco have been in business for years. I mean, maybe they are, but they're a great secret if they are still in business. And then I'll just show you how I arrange my threads. Now, I've got the bulk of them in here, and then I have a separate palette. They're all in numerical order, and with the bulk of the threads on there. And then I just do a separate lot of cards in your numerical order, but I only put one thread of 6, usually on there. I mean, sometimes I don't, it just depends on the mood I'm in. But so here, for example, for 154, I just took the main thread off the main supply and put it on here. And it's just a lot easier to work with because they're lighter and they don't get too manky either, because if you keep drawing from the main lot, well, there's a lot of wear and tear if you're doing a big piece like this. And it is really very big. Not quite tablecloth size, but, I mean, I'm treating it in a way of just working on the bit I'm working on and not thinking about the rest, which is, you do have to do anyway with full coverage to a degree if it's a little bit bigger than normal, because it can be quite defeating if you keep looking at all the white part that you've still got to stitch. But because this piece has interesting elements all the way through it, it's almost like doing mini finishes all the way through. And I'll just show you this. Here's the embarrassingly large piece. But it's just, so good. Hope you can see that all right. And see, at the moment I'm working on this corner, which is this treasure chest. And there's a plate there, a sword, all sorts of things there. And let me just show you. Just down there, you see. So that is going to take quite some time. Now, oh, I know, yes. I also, because it's such a large piece, I got, or Harlequin got these for me. I sort of told him what I wanted, and he went looking. Smart and Cool magnetic silicone ties. So I've never used these before, and this is the first time I've opened it up as well. So, ooh. See, and they're all stuck together. They're magnets there. Oh gosh. Yes. And of course it's to loop. That is quite weird. It's just they all want to stick to each other. Yeah, that's, and then you put your fabric, from what I understand anyway. So you just gather it up. I could probably cut some of this off actually, because it's a big amount I've got on around the edges. Excuse my throat. And see, it holds the fabric. Because what I did with Rise Above is I just rolled it up and put clips. What did I just show you? I just think I'm just being so unclear this morning. But anyway, excuse me. So, for example, if I was working, see, I'm rolling it up like that. Just to protect the stitches. So you roll it up, and say I had to work on this area, it hadn't been stitched yet, I just put my clips, these clips on. And I mean, they're not perfect by any means, but it does sort of help a little bit. But these loopy things, I'm hoping that they'll work better. But who knows? Because I'm not somebody who takes to change very well at all. That's why I thought Her Majesty was so wonderful. Right, so that really is the end of the actual stitching, because I'll just be working on the piece that I just showed you there, unless I decide to, you know, I've got some other ones I can be doing, but at the moment that has captured me totally, so we'll just see how far that goes. Now, I just wanted now to just go to a few things about the Queen, the late Queen. And I have some books, so I thought, well, I'll just flip through and just share with you, just for a few minutes, some of the images of Her Majesty and just talk about her a little bit. That's the end of the stitching. In a way it isn't, because there are some pictures with some fine gowns and beautiful embroidery on them from the royal collection. And anyway, I'll just have a little look through this and just share with you some of the pictures. Seeing as you're probably sitting there stitching, I hope you are anyway, because that is what saves the sanity of quite a lot of people in this crazy age we have here. Well, there's George V's coronation. And the Queen's father was George VI. Which we'll get to him. And as many of you would probably know, George VI was not really meant to be king. He became king because his brother, his older brother, abdicated because he wanted to marry a divorcee, which was not permitted in those times. Actually, that's not quite true. I think he could have done it, but the opinion of the times and the standards of the times would not permit it, put it that way. I mean, apparently if you were divorced you couldn't be in the royal enclosure at Ascot, and this lady that he was intent on, she'd been married divorced twice, so it really wasn't ever going to work. Anyway, the younger brother became George VI. He was married to Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, who is the late Queen Mother, and they were really thrust into the spotlight. He wasn't ever expecting to be king, and he had a speech impediment. They've made films about that, where he had quite a stammer, and so the prospect of having to step up to the plate must have been quite daunting to him, to say the least. And the Queen Mother, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, she never expected to be the mother of queens, you know, I mean. So for both of them, it was quite a shock. And the George VI did have speech therapy, which did help him a lot, because of course in those days the radio was the main means of communication for the sovereign to the people, so you can only imagine the anxiety of him that he experienced when he had to speak to the people. But anyway, so this one here, the coronation portrait of George VI, and here he is in his coronation gear. That's the Queen's father. And that's what I mean about the costumes and everything. I mean, where would they be without their costumes? And there is the Queen Mother and her beautiful gown, the work on that. So anyway, that's the parents of the Queen anyway. Now let's move along. Because of course, George the Sixth smoked a lot. He was a chain smoker, and he got lung cancer. And there were people that said, oh, you know, he shouldn't have smoked so much. But then there were other people that said, well, he probably wouldn't have smoked so much if he wasn't under such stress and bother for being made a king. You know? So I think that's probably a point. Now, this is a rather lovely portrait. That's the Queen Mother and Elizabeth and Margaret. Of course, Margaret was the Queen's younger sister. And there's the coronation coach. else do we have here? And George was a wonderful father. George the Sixth. He adored his girls, and their family life was absolutely marvelous for the girls. And there they are during wartime, walking around the bombed houses and things, talking to the people. In times of disaster, that's when the royals really come to the fore, because they're a symbol of stability, aren't they? And they never left Buckingham Palace all the way through the war, even though London was bombed very heavily. Now then, here we are. Let's move on to the Queen there now. Just looking at this. Right. Princess Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace after her marriage to Prince Philip in November 1947. And there she is. I think Norman Hartnell designed her wedding gown. He did a lot of her designs. And here she is looking at Prince Charles when he was born. And of course, Prince Philip and Elizabeth, there's a wonderful love story there. It was just so fortunate that they fell for each other in the way they did. Let's see now. Just having a look through I'll go on to the other two. They're small books, the other ones, they're just black and white. The scene inside the Abbey at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953, that was the year I was born, and the Archbishop of Canterbury holds the orb to the Queen, and the Queen and Prince Philip after the coronation, photographed by Cecil Beaton. So there's the scene in the coronation, and here's Elizabeth and Philip afterwards. And she look at the cloak here. Look at all the work on that. And look at how dashing Philip was. Beautiful couple. Quite resplendent in all his regalia. And crown probably weighed a lot as well. Quite symbolic, because the whole future for her was going to be a heavy future with all the responsibilities she had. And she went up to the altar apparently when she came back from Africa, because she found out she was Queen in Africa. She wasn't there when her father died. Excuse me. And she prayed for guidance, and whether her life was short or long, she said she was dedicated to the service of the people, basically. So here's her gold carriage as she was going along. Now, what's this one here? The Queen and Prince Philip walk in procession to open Parliament in 1958. Yeah. But, you see, the Queen or the King are not allowed into the House of Commons, the lower house, in England at all, except one day, and that's the day that she declares, or he declares, Parliament open after an election. Otherwise, they're not allowed to go in there. Now here's a little family group at Balmoral. Got Charles, Anne, Andrew, Edward, the Queen and Prince Philip. Of course, she loved Balmoral. She loved Scotland a lot and spent a lot of time up there. All right, so I think that's pretty much that little book. So I've got this one here, The Life and Times of King George VI. And have a quick look here. See if there's anything. To show you. There's just the family tree there. If you want to hold it still and you can have a look where they all fit in. There's a picture of Queen Victoria with all the royal children. Of course, King George VI was actually, his name was Albert, Prince Albert, but when he became king, he changed his name. That did happen. That's like Edward VIII, his name actually was David. Well, they used to call him David anyway. I mean, I don't know if that was his given name, but at home they used to call him David. I'm just having a quick look through here. Of course, Harlequin and I did go to Buckingham Palace actually, because when we were over there, unusually the Queen opened Buckingham Palace for people to actually go through. We had our backpacks. We were in London for a little while, you know, just to have a look around. So we turned up to tour through with all the other tourists. And of course, they had the security people there going through everybody's, you know, whatever they had on them, going through all their backpacks and everything. And opened the Harlequins up. And there's a great pair of scissors in there, because, you know, he trims his beard. And they took them and gave them back when we left. I mean, they were very efficient. But I just couldn't believe it when I saw those scissors. I thought, who would take those? But, you know, that's what he does. Let's see now. You're not missing anything here. I'm just looking through just to get some of the images. A lot of it's writing, so I'm just finding if there's anything there. See, this is where Edward VIII, the instrument of abdication, the letter, because he really didn't like being king. It seems to me anyway, Edward VIII, because he used to call it princing when he used to have to go around doing his duties and everything. And he really exasperated the courtiers and everything, because he didn't want to do things traditionally. He wanted to do them his way. You know, he used to wear American suits and everything, and where everybody else was still wearing the starch collars, and it wasn't for him really. But it says here, I, Edward VIII of Great Britain, Ireland, and the British dominions beyond the seas, King, Emperor of India, do hereby declare my irrevocable determination to renounce the throne for myself and for my descendants, and my desire that effect should be given to this instrument of abdication immediately, in token whereof I have hereunto set my hand this 10th day of December, 1936, in the presence of the witnesses whose signatures are subscribed. And there's Albert's signature there, who was to become King George. And as I say, it was devastating for his brother to be handed that, but he surpassed his role. And there's the family there after the king's coronation with their crowns. That's a fabulous crown he's got on, isn't it? It's almost like a top hat. Wow. And here he is. There's the radio there where he made his speeches to the nation all the way through the Second World War, of course, to give comfort to the people. And as I say, he must have gone through so much angst with his speech problems. But he pressed on. For weeks before the coronation, streets throughout London vied with one another in efforts to create resplendent decorations. The inhabitants of Wyke Street, Old Ford, were characteristic of the many happy groups which were photographed during the celebrations. Poor but loyal, beg your pardon, poor but loyal. The Queen's Scottish blood and the domestic bent of mind drew her to one of the smaller exhibits of the Empire Exhibition. She is here seen with the King, following closely a demonstration of the spinning wheel by a woman from the island of Barra in the Hebrides. Right, well, I suppose I better not tarry too long here. It really is amazing the life that the royals lead, because they really do not have a day to call their own. Everything's booked up months ahead. It takes a tremendous amount of selflessness to be in that family. And there's Winston Churchill bowing to his king. And they say that, well, it's true, in Parliament, if any member has an important speech, to deliver, there's a statue of Winston Churchill outside the House of Commons, and they rub his foot. It's a metal statue. They rub his foot for luck, and it's almost, I don't know now whether it's almost polished clean, but I thought that was interesting. Not that they probably do it now. They probably don't do it now, but they used to, put it that way. Right, so I'm coming towards the end of this. Just have a quick look here. Oh, and here's, this is towards the last days when he was really quite ill, and you can see him quite ill there. And the Queen Mother still looking absolutely resplendent. So that was towards the end of his reign. And it says here, the King waves farewell to his daughter On the last day of January 1952, Princess Elizabeth and her husband left London Airport for East Africa on the first stage of their journey to Australia. They are seen right after boarding the airliner. The King, who was to have made the tour himself before illness supervened, was at the airport with the Queen and Princess Margaret to wave them farewell. Though looking pale and tired, the King stood bareheaded in a biting wind as the aircraft took off. It was the last formal occasion on which he was seen in public. On the following day, with the Queen and Princess Margaret, he returned to Sandringham, where he spent a few days shooting with his friends. So there's Elizabeth and Philip leaving, and there's the King bidding farewell. Where is he? Just there. That's him there. Bareheaded in the biting wind. And having a lung condition. That's incredible, isn't it? And news of the death of King George VI reached the Queen in Kenya, where the Duke of Edinburgh, with the Duke of Edinburgh. She was on the first stage of the royal tour to Australia and New Zealand. Accompanied by the Duke, she flew back to England, landing at London Airport at 4:30 in the afternoon of the 7th of February. She is met by the Duke of Gloucester after alighting, and is here seen leaving the plane, while Mr. Churchill and other Privy Councillors are waiting to greet her as she steps onto English soil for the first time as Queen. There she is. Let's see if this is what they've got after. The King lay in state in Sandringham Church. Right, there's his coffin there. And of course, Prince Philip was not interred. He was kept in the vault until they had an agreement, himself and Elizabeth, that they would not be buried without each other or interred without each other, which is really rather beautiful. And they're now reunited as a family. And there's the catafalque, which is as people may have seen in recent days, people filing past. Well, that was George VI's lying in. Now we'll just see if there's anything else here. That looks very much like the Queen's funeral, doesn't it? With the sailors. And what does she say here? The floral tributes to the King. And as Charles said, may flights of angels speed thee to thy rest. And I think that's very suiting for the Queen. She was a truly amazing woman. And I know the Prime Minister here, in her, some of the tours she did to this country, we had a Prime Minister called Bob Menzies, and she was sitting there, and in one of his speeches where she was sitting there behind him, he said, "I did but see her passing by, and yet I'll love her till I die." And she went, I thought that was really sweet because, I mean, what can you do if someone says that? I mean, you know. Anyway, so I think that's all. I'll probably start blubbing. It's just such a shame. I mean, it's good, you know. I mean, she had a fabulous reign, and no one can go on forever. And I think she's, as usual, her impeccable timing with everything. The weather was wonderful for the day because I know it was raining in other parts of the UK, but in London, the sun came out as her coffin came out down the stairs, and you know, um, that's all I can say, really. Right, so that's the end of this little episode. If you've lasted this long, probably not many people have, but I do thank you very much for doing so. And we'll see, as Vera Lynn would say, we will meet again like some sunny day. I'll have to do quite a lot on that piece, though, to show any kind of progress because it's going to take a while. So we'll see how things go. But until next time, all the best to you. Happy stitching, and goodbye for now.